문제가 나왔었던 지원해요. 그다음에 또 트럼프 정부권으로 화제가 됐었던 이스라엘 팔레스타인 해화 문제와 그다음에 현재 협력 중인 업체와의 유즈 케이스에 대해서 간단하게 업데이트를 드리도록 하겠습니다. 첫 번째로 OKX 상장과 옵스 센터에 관한 내용인데요. 다들 아시는 대로 25일날 이제 OKX, USDT, USDK 마켓에 상장이 되어 있고요. 그다음에 옵스 센터에 대해 설명을 드리면 저희가 지난 6월달에도 한번 말씀을 드렸는데 누구나 오실 수 있는 오픈된 공간으로서 옵스 관련 행사, 교육, 옵스 외에 타 암호화폐 블록체인 프로젝트들도 같이 사용할 수 있는 오픈된 공간을 지금 만들고 있습니다. 그래서 인테리어가 시작됐고 한 2주에서 3주 정도면 이제 센터가 완공돼서 저희도 그쪽으로 이주를 하게 될 것 같고요. 센터가 완공된 이후에는 옵스 커뮤니티 분들 언제든지 자유롭게 오셔서 저희 프로젝트에 대한 소개나 그리고 궁금하셨던 사항들 질문도 하셔도 되고, 그다음에 또 저희가 지금 진행 중인 멤버십 프로그램을 가동할 때 옵스 센터에 오시면 뭐 다양한 혜택들, 등급이 되시는 분들은 무료 커피를 제공한다든지 아니면 이제 또 혜택의 예시를 들면 저희 행사를 우선 초대를 드린다든지 본사 임원진들이 방문을 했을 때 저녁 식사에 대한 기회가 생긴다든지 하는 혜택을 많이 준비해 주시니까 지켜봐 주시기 바랍니다. 다음으로 지난달에 발표가 되었던 GLF에 관해서 간략하게 설명을 드리려고 하는데요. 이 GLF가 뭐냐라고 물어보시는 분들이 많아서 설명을 드리면 이제 우리나라의 SKT나 KT 같은 통신사들의 협업체인데요. 세계에서 가장 선도적인 수준의 그 기업들, 통신사 기업들이 모여있는 그 단체고요. 그래서 멤버로는 이제 미국의 AT&T나 독일의 도이치텔레콤, 중국의 차이나텔레콤, 뭐 텔레포니카, 오랑주 같은 굵직굵직한 세계 선도적인 통신사 기업들이 모여있는 협업체고요. 이 GLF에서 2년 전부터 이제 블록체인의 가능성을 인지하고 본인들의 통신 업계에서 블록체인을 활용하면 어떤 시너지가 날 수 있을지에 대해서 지속적으로 연구를 해왔습니다. 그리고 본인들이 이제 찾아낸 몇 가지 유즈 케이스들에 대해서 실제로 이를 실현시켜주고 구현시켜줄 수 있는 기술 파트너들이 누가 있는지에 대해서 모색을 해왔습니다. 그 모색 결과 지난달에 발표된 것처럼 총 4가지 업계를 GLF에서 선정해서 발표했는데요. IBM과 컨센서스, R3, 그리고 오브스입니다. 다들 아시는 대로 이제 IBM 이를 블록체인을 활용해서 미국 정부에서 해결을 하겠다라고 지금 얘기를 했는데요. 그래서 중동평화계획으로 총 500억 달러로 하나로 치면 약 59조 원 규모를 총 향후 10년간 프로젝트에 투자를 하겠다라고 밝혔고, 이 중에 280억 달러 정도를 그 팔레스타인 인프라를 구축하는 데 사용을 하겠다라고 공지를 했습니다. 이 중에서 이스라엘에서 총 6인이 그 기업 대표로 초청이 돼서 참석을 했는데요. 그 중에 이제 저희 코파운더 4분 중에 한 명이 네타 코린이 유일하게 여성으로서 이제 해당 바레인에서 열린 해당 회의에 참석을 했고요. 지금 직면하고 있는 문제들을 블록체인을 활용하면 효과적이고 투명하게 해결을 가능할 수 있다고 주장을 하고 있습니다. 그래서 구체적으로 블록체인을 활용하면 뭐 난민들의 신원.
You're working here. You want to spend all your time in a place where there is zero chance, zero opportunity for you to make it to the top. Literally zero. Or you want to move to a world where you are actually being measured by your contribution to society, right? Here you're being measured by your contribution to society. Here you're measured by how much profit you generated for your boss. Every day you go to work, your boss looks to see how much profit you made, and his boss looks at how much profit he made for him, and so on and so on. It's about to replace it with. The blockchain is the slowest, most expensive database ever created. Not the fastest. It's the slowest, most expensive database ever created by human in 100 years. Anyone disagrees with me? You can come talk to me tomorrow, later on. I'll prove it to you. Right? So it's bulky, it's slow, right? It requires a lot of consensus, right? And it's expensive. So if it has all of these things, what is it good for? What is the blockchain good for? We found that the blockchain is good to pay interest for everybody on the planet. We can pay interest, we can make money on the money, much better than a bank, and pay interest to 7 million people, and the system works. Okay, so these are all the banks in America that used to have 100 billion or more in 1990, okay? And now, how many banks left? 4 banks. And the gray area, which you can see this gray area, that's how much interest you get earning. So the interest is going down, and the number of banks is going down. Same thing in Korea, right? Less banks, and they pay nothing. They take your money, they pay nothing back. So the blockchain can fix this. It can fix this problem. Only the blockchain. The government cannot fix this. Nothing else can fix this problem. The only way to fix it is to create it, just like with voice over IP. It only goes up if more people are buying it. It doesn't go up because of news. Just because Facebook says, oh, we're going to do something, that has nothing to do with Bitcoin. If we cannot use it, if we cannot use it for commerce, to pay something, or we cannot use it for interest, for example, to earn interest, that's a good use case. Or we cannot use it for loans, then it will not go up. Okay, so again, back to the voice over IP, right? Back in 1995, when I invented voice over IP, the best technology was ATM. Anyone here knows ATM? All the people, Samsung, all the people in the world said ATM, the best. You know, and I said, no, it's going to be TCP/IP. I built the technology on TCP/IP, and TCP/IP ate ATM, right? So now there's even better technology. Now there's one bigger fish here, right? Who's eating TCP/IP. The blockchain is so powerful, it's going to eat all of the TCP/IP. Okay? Today, the most powerful computer in the world is the Bitcoin network. More powerful than all the crypto. Crypto is not energy. Crypto is Ethereum. Okay, so how do you make Ethereum or ORBS or Celsius powerful? What do you need to make it very valuable? How do you make the coin go up? What do you need? What is M? What is C? Celsius. What is M?
Money.
Money. Yes. What else? Members, right?
Member.
So if you have a lot of members, you have a big community, then your coin is going to be valuable, right? Orbs working very hard on building a community. Celsius working very hard on building a community. Bitcoin, big community, right? But unless the community is growing, you will not have E equals MC squared, right? That's where you make the money, is when E equals MC squared, right? So what we do is credit.
Company.
We issue credit, right? How come America is so powerful? Why America is so number one? Right? Most of the credit in the world, half of all the credit in the world is issued in America. Right? So the American economy is working very well. Right? Because there's a lot of credit. In the rest of the world, there's not so much credit. Again, 3 waves of innovation: infrastructure, middleware, distributed applications, right? Celsius is a dApp, right? ORBS is an infrastructure play. ORBS is right here in the middle. You have to add your logo in there. Okay, so crypto is like Pac-Man. Anyone here played the Pac-Man? Always hungry.
Yes.
Always want to eat the asset class. Always wants to eat more money. Right? Right now, Pac-Man is going after gold. Right now, it's trying to eat gold. After we eat gold, it's going to go after the won, after the yuan, after the yen, after every currency, right? Bigger, bigger, bigger. Always hungry. But it needs a lot of community. The community is growing, it's hungry. The community is not growing, it's not hungry. All right? So we talked about anarchists, libertarians, speculators, right? Institutions. This is the adoption curve, right? Bitcoin was number 1, then Ethereum. What's number 3? What's going to make it go up? Right now we're stuck here, right? We're stuck crossing the chasm. That's called crossing the chasm. How do you cross it? Some people say security tokens. I'm undecided. Maybe, maybe not. Too complicated. Security tokens are way too complicated. The other option, NFT. Do you guys know what NFT is? Non-fungible token. You can take a car, a Picasso, or a building, and you create a digital representation, and then you can trade in that representation. Right? That's being developed right now. I'm a big believer in stablecoin. You can take the dollar, create a stablecoin, USDC or TUSD, and that stablecoin can then be moved on the blockchain 24/7, 365. Unlike the bank, you can bypass the bank using stablecoins. Probably going too fast to the translator. Right?
Public.
So VoIP to VoIP. If you want to know what happened, look at the movie VoIP. You can know what's happening to the movie VoIP on your IP. Right?
Not to your friends.
Decentralization is war. It's a war between toll collectors, like the banks. They're just toll collectors. They just take money, right? And users, right? Scaling is about where we bring 100 million users. If we don't bring 100 million right now, all of blockchain is 30 million users. Like this, nothing. Okay, so we need to find the next 100 million users. And crypto is here to replace the middleman. Anyone know this guy? That's me, no? Anyone know this guy?
Oh yes, I know.
Who invented the blockchain? Satoshi? No, Satoshi, this is Satoshi white paper. Who here read Satoshi's white paper? How many people here read Satoshi's white paper? No one. No one read Satoshi's white paper. Satoshi writes in his white paper, page number 9. I took my ideas, 4 of my ideas, I took from this guy. Okay? Scott Stornetta, he invented the blockchain. He's the first guy to create the blockchain, 1991, in Belcourt. I was working in Bell Labs, 7 miles away from him, working on Voice over IP. He was working on the blockchain. Okay? Same time. Okay? Scott only supports one project. He's not part of Bitcoin, not part of Ethereum, only one project. Okay? Power to the people. That's what this is about. It's all about bringing power back to the people. And this is our team. We are the only company in crypto, well, I don't know in Korea, we have to check that. But we're the only company in crypto that has more women than men, okay, on the team. Most projects, crypto projects, 9 guys and a dog. And the dog is male also. You know? So if you want a revolution, you want to create a revolution and you're only going to have men, not a very good revolution. It's going to go like that. You need to have women to create the revolution, especially if it's talking about money. Okay, that's how you download the app. Thank you very much. We're going to do some a presentation and then a Q&A.
Co-founders of ORBS and Group. We got into the space in 2013 and we heard about Bitcoin. We see an asset class growth happening in our generation. So the first thing we did initially. But where we saw the opportunity was actually in other protocols because they had innovation. In Bitcoin it's very hard to try different things because the market cap is so big. Even at the time it was like $10 billion. So there were new projects trying to do faster transactions or anonymous transactions or smart contracts. So that was very interesting for us. And the second thing is that these new projects started a low market cap. So let's say we wanted to do 10x to invest in Bitcoin when it's $10 billion market, it needs to reach $100 billion market. Some of the tokens at the time were $1 million market cap. So to reach $10 million market cap, it's the same 10x. And not a lot of people know this, but the first ever token sale, a lot of people from Israel were involved. This is Mastercoin. They did their token sale at the end of 2013. In 2014, Vitalik came to Israel to see if he can build a secondary protocol on top of Mastercoin, on top of Bitcoin. He realized that Mastercoin is not the right thing, and then he started Ethereum. So we got exposed to Ethereum very early on into Vitalik, and we invested, I think, in all the large protocols since 2013. So Mastercoin and Counterparty and Ethereum and EOS and the rest. This has been successful with the growth of the market, the growth of some of these assets. Today our group is managing the most active and I think largest crypto fund in Israel, investing in different projects across the industry. But in 2017, something crazy happened. This is actually when a lot of people got exposed to the technology. There was the ICO boom. I don't know if you saw, there is a short video I will show you that shows what happened to ICO fundings over the last 4 years. You see a big bubble, and this is the DAO. The DAO raised $170 million. And then there was the hack and Ethereum Classic. So this is the big bubble here. But putting that aside, the aggregate is still less than $300 million, and the DAO is about 150 of that. But look what happened towards the middle of 2017. And this is really where the ICO boom craziness started to happen. So obviously this is not sustainable. ICO funding actually surpassed venture capital funding in 2017, 2018. And as I mentioned before, it's very hard to create real companies. And in the crypto space, I think it's even harder. So we thought instead of investing in white papers, let's go to real companies, companies that have governance, traction, user, product market fit, revenue, real companies, and help them transition into the crypto space. This would be an interesting investment opportunity, but also will help mature the ecosystem. So we were one of the first companies in Israel to consult real companies to do this transition and do tokenization. And some of these companies raised significant amounts on top of Ethereum. But what we soon realized is that these companies can't really transition their user base on top of Ethereum. Because Ethereum, even though it's amazing, they created a new asset class, it's still very immature from a technology perspective. The transaction throughput is quite low, the fee per transaction is very high, there is upgradability issues, there's governance issues that were affecting apps trying to build on top of Ethereum. I don't know if you know, there is a website that is named the State of the dApps, which tracks the different dApps that are building on top of Ethereum. I think today there's more than 3,000 or 4,000 decentralized applications on top of Ethereum. But if you check how active they are and how many users are actually using these dApps, it's very, very low amount of numbers. It's very, very mature, it's just beginning. Even Ethereum, that is the second largest cryptocurrency, I think it's still a little bit in the academic phase. You know, there's very innovative ideas, but business traction is just starting from that respect, from real application and real usage. So what we thought what these applications need in order to scale today, in order to be able to start using blockchain for their ecosystem. And this is how ORBS started. We actually analyzed all the different infrastructure in the market, and there's very innovative projects, and each one tries to optimize for something else. It can be scale or anonymity or compliance or decentralization. And we don't think there's going to be one blockchain that is the best of everything, because it's a lot of trade-offs. But we thought that if we can build a blockchain from the ground up that caters to some of the large enterprises that we were working with, I think this can become something very big and drive real value into the ecosystem. So I want to show you one slide from the presentation that I think is the most important slide about ORBS and really shows the differentiator with the other infrastructures. We see the ecosystem today. We see dichotomy. in the market. On the left-hand side, we see very innovative infrastructures like Ethereum and Polkadot and Tezos. And essentially what they're doing, they're building a public, permissionless infrastructure for decentralized applications. But as I discussed a little bit earlier, decentralized applications still have a long way before they can gather mainstream adoption and make impact on day-to-day. Today, the largest apps on top of these infrastructures are about 500 daily active users. It's a very small amount. And my belief is that I don't think there will actually be a peer-to-peer Uber that is better than Uber, or a peer-to-peer Airbnb that is larger than Airbnb. Because we need to understand some of these marketplaces in the real world, they create a lot of value. Not everything needs to be decentralized. Some of them are gathering too much power, so I think if they use blockchain technology, they actually share their power better with the ecosystem. That will make them even more competitive. I think they will start to compete on this trust. But decentralized apps are very, very early. It's more academic than actually business applicable. On the other side, we see the private blockchains. AWS is creating one, IBM, Hyperledger, Cordora, Quorum. Essentially what they're building is a private blockchain for enterprises, for large companies. So there's a lot of business traction from the real world. Samsung is looking at them, Microsoft is looking at them, and financial institutions, and many other top 500 companies. The issue is that this infrastructure had little innovation, because essentially this private network, they relied on trust between the parties that are part of these private blockchains. And the real innovation about blockchain is the trustless nature of the technology. These infrastructure are not Byzantine fault tolerant. So where do we see ORBS? We think ORBS can be in the middle, and this is really the blue ocean. If you can develop a public permissionless infrastructure, but for enterprises, I think this can become something very big. As I mentioned, they're building permissionless infrastructure for dApps, very little business traction. They're building private infrastructure for enterprises, a lot of business action, but very low innovation. But in the middle, if you can build a public permissionless infrastructure for enterprises, this can become very big. And it's a little bit deceiving to see the actual use cases, 100% trusting the middleman or a centralized server. So I can give you a couple of examples how large enterprises, I think, will use blockchain technology in the future and how it will be applied by governance and government and mainstream people. So two of the big things that are happening in Europe right now, one, for example, is that the European Union, they just fined Google for abusing the algorithm and driving search results to sell more Google products within their search engine, and this is obviously illegal. They fined them $2 billion for doing that. And they're going to pay that, Google, obviously. But the day afterwards, let's say Google wants to prove to the European Union that the algorithm is doing what it's supposed to do, or the European Union wants to enforce that Google algorithm is abusing its power. How do they do that? This is the kind of use cases you can't rely on accounting firms and law firms or notarians to provide the trust. You need something to provide trust in a scalable manner, in a technology way, and this is exactly one of the use cases to apply blockchain. Another example is GDPR, for example, in Europe, the right to forget yourself. Today we give permissions to many companies like Visa and MasterCard with our credit card, or let's say Facebook with all our information. But GDPR says that if I want to take my permissions back, they have to delete this information. And these large companies will want to delete the information because it will become illegal for them to hold it. But how does Facebook prove to the users and to therapists qualities and advantages in ORBS is that we're creating public permissionless infrastructure. So over time, we'll be able to do this. And Stellar, they're very fast, but they're only 21 nodes. So they're very centralized in their governance compared to Ethereum and Bitcoin that have 18,000 nodes. But because you need to propagate the data all over the network, transactions become very expensive. For example, to store data on top of Ethereum today is almost 10,000 times more expensive than to store data on top of Amazon Web Services. So if I'm a developer or I'm an enterprise and I need to decide, am I going to use Ethereum or am I going to use Amazon? About 99% of the use cases I will use Amazon because it's very hard to find use cases with 10,000x ROI or 100x ROI or 10x ROI. Fee is something that obviously companies care about a lot. So ORBS is solving some of these issues, and we want to keep the network as decentralized as possible. So a big part is the community and the proof of stake universe, and how the network is secured by the stake of the users. And you can today stake the ORB tokens using MetaMask or directly from the Ether wallet by sending 0.07 orbs, or also we're adding the support of Celsius, so any tokens within the Celsius app automatically will be staked. And this helps secure the network and also keep it decentralized. There's a lot of innovations that ORBS is bringing to the market that will enable large enterprise to use blockchain in scale. Some of the things is fees, as I mentioned. ORBS is creating a fee structure that is almost on par with Amazon, which is unheard of today. ORBS is creating a scalable infrastructure that we can infinitely scale the transaction through.
It cost me millions of dollars because I was against proof of work. I was like, it's so wasteful. It burns so much electricity. I waited until 2013 to buy Bitcoin, you know? So, but today, 2% of all the electricity in the world is consumed by proof of work. So you guys obviously developed something much better. So tell us a little bit about proof of stake and why is it better and how does it work? Because I think a lot of people probably don't know what that means.
Yeah, so the big issue, the blockchain at the end of the day is a database. As Alex mentioned, it's actually the most expensive database. So if you ask most of the business world, what do they prefer? Low fees, privacy, high transaction throughput, or decentralization, high fees, lower transaction throughput. Most of the use cases, they would prefer a centralized database. But I think there are unique places where decentralization actually adds a lot of strength and enables new kind of applications and gives a much higher trust. For example, Bitcoin is one of these applications, creating a new asset class. This is the first time that we have something that is digital, but it's also scarce. There wasn't such thing before. You know, with the internet and the ability to send information peer-to-peer, it's okay to send an email to everybody in the room because it's just information. But when you want to send money, sending the same amount or the same transaction to two people, that's a big issue. You need to solve the double spend. So one way to do that was using proof of work. It's a computation that is done outside of the network to approve and sign the transactions, and there is the protocol rule that the longest chain wins, and it means that potentially 51% attack on the network. If you own 51% of the hash power, you can start changing transactions, but it's not necessarily your incentive to do that because you spend so much money on acquiring this hash power, then losing the consensus will actually hurt a lot of the wealth that you're holding. So proof of stake takes a little bit of that similarity and says that if you own 51% of the stake, essentially you rule the consensus and you can change history or control transactions, but there's not much incentive to do that because basically if you're the biggest holder or a group of holders and they abuse their power, mostly the value will collapse, or they don't actually have an incentive to do that. And one of the advantages is that if we are able to achieve decentralization of the stake of ORBS, reaching 51% becomes very, very hard. So we are trying to achieve the same security and consensus as Bitcoin. What ORBS does in part of their proof of stake model is that we can scale the amount of validator pool to be very, very big, but each block, there is a randomized committee of 10 or 21 validators that sign the block. And we can mathematically prove that choosing this randomized 21 out of a big pool of validators is actually more secure, but still achieves the efficiencies and the low cost compared to any other infrastructure.
Yeah, so I want to also touch on yield, right? Because I think the next 20 or 30 years, basically all the central banks in the world are going to push down the currencies. So if you think about the US dollar, or you think about the yuan, or about the yen, right, which are the three kind of, or the euro, right, the four kind of dominant currencies around the planet, they all have tremendous amount of debt on them, right? In Japan, debt is 300% of GDP. It's the highest in the world, actually. In the United States now, $23 trillion. The United States owes more to the rest of the world, right? Every person, I'm American, I owe over $200,000 to Korea, to Japan, to China. Each person, a baby is born, owes $200,000 to everybody, right? So it's unsustainable. The only way for the dollar to get out of that, or for the United States to get out of it, is to print more money and devalue the dollar. So anyone, like you said, anyone who keeps their value in dollars or in any other fiat currency is going to lose the value. If you take the Bitcoin against the dollar lost 99.9% of its value in 11 years. Right? By definition, if Bitcoin is the 10,000, the dollar stayed the dollar, it's lost all of its value because the dollar stayed the same. So the advantage of deflationary proof of stake currencies, right? I mean, think of ORBS for a second as a currency, is that they do work and they produce value, right? So they're completely disconnected from the dollar, the yen, the won, and so on. They don't have debt behind them. The opposite. Behind every Bitcoin, there is millions of dollars of electricity, right? It's a deposit. Everybody has to put money to make it. You either put money by mining with electricity, or you put money by buying it from somebody else. But either way, there's zero debt behind the Bitcoin, right? Versus a dollar that has billions and trillions of dollars worth of debt. So when you're looking at all these different coins, you have to look at them. Are they inflationary or deflationary? Like Ethereum is an inflationary currency. It creates much more Ethereum than, for example, Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin is deflationary because of two things, right? One is a limited supply, so more people join, it becomes deflationary. And the second one, a lot of people lose their keys. Already 4 million coins have never been used, right? So that's really, the number is not going to be 21 million. There might be 21 million created, but the real number is more like 18 or 19 million because all these people lost their keys, including Satoshi, never used his 10 wallets, right? So that's 5% of all the Bitcoins just sitting in 10 wallets that Satoshi Nakamoto is holding, right? So that's a deflationary currency because every day more and more people lose their keys. So the yield, like your yield right now is what, 7%?
8%.
8%.
So I think Bitcoin rewards the miners, but it's very hard to participate and be a miner. There is today just a few mining pools that are taking part in the Bitcoin mining network. As I mentioned, it's very, very competitive. And Bitcoin, for example, they own the manufacturing, they own the devices. And if you want to compete with them, you need to go to places to buy from them, that obviously they charge a premium, and go to places with very low electricity. So today, most of the mining is China or Iceland or some in Canada or Eastern Europe. It's a very, very competitive space that most of the community and the ecosystem can't be part of it. But proof of stake, it's the same mechanism to decentralize and secure the network, but it enables participation by anybody that holds a token by delegating it to guardians, and guardians are the ones that choose the validators. This is how we keep the network decentralized. Essentially in ORBS, there's 4 roles. There are the applications, there are the block producers, they upload transactions to the networks. There's validators that they validate the transactions, they validate the consensus. Then there's the guardians that choose the validators. This is a big difference. Most of the networks, the node operators and the guardians are the same people. In ORBS, we actually created 2 roles for these functions. And then there are the token holders that can delegate their tokens to the guardians. Because we understand that people mainstream, they're not going to check every day, what is the validators doing, who has a good uptime, who is securing the network, like they're supposed to do. This is why we also created the role of delegators and guardians. You can delegate your tokens to guardians. They're like your representative, like in a representative democracy, and they will drive the agenda for the delegators. So by one time delegating the tokens, you can enjoy 8% yield annually to the tokens, which also being look, what are the largest companies in the world today? In the end of the day, they are marketplaces. Uber connects between people and cars, Amazon between people and shopping, e-commerce, Airbnb between apartments and people, Google is AdWords marketplace, Facebook is also a marketplace for ads. So they generate their value from their ecosystem. The users, Facebook, it's us, Airbnb is the people that put their apartments, Uber is the drivers. So I do think they're adding a lot of value to the world. Uber, I think it's a great app, for example, Airbnb is great. But they're gaining also too much power. And because they're becoming so big, like these 5 companies, they're about 90% of the S&P 500 or 50% or whatever. They're growing very, very big and they're becoming even more and more powerful. And in the end of the day, we need to ask ourselves how we can make the balance more correct. And I think blockchain is one of the ways to do that. And I think that these big companies, they will add this. I always had this question, how do blockchain technology becomes mainstream? I always understood blockchain as a new asset class, as an investment thesis. Everybody needs to diversify. I understood Ethereum as a new to the market and via different vertical, as I mentioned before in one of the slides. But even if I look at all of the infrastructure today, I think there is about only 10 large infrastructure projects that are very well funded. I can count them. It's about 10 large infrastructures. I don't think necessarily there will be additional ones because it's very hard to raise this significant amount of funds to build these long-term projects and to create a network effect. So I think there is competition between these 10. Some of them will become bigger, potentially some of them will disappear, but I don't think there will be tens and hundreds of large infrastructure. There will be few for different markets. So this is one. And why I think they have big advantage over Apple and Samsung and Facebook and some of the large enterprises is because they will be able to provide a higher level of guarantee. What makes ORBS unique, Ethereum unique, Cosmos, Polkadot, Tezos is that we have a token, and the token aligns the economical incentives within the network. So it's a public permissionless infrastructure. This is something that is very hard for the enterprises to create. For them to create a token and a permissionless infrastructure and token economy, I think it's something that from a regulatory perspective scares them because they have a lot to lose. They're not like a startup that can go and be very disruptive and create this network effect like Bitcoin did and Ethereum did. We see Facebook, even now, they're trying to build a private blockchain, super compliant, KYC, AML, and they're getting a lot of scrutiny from the regulator. I'm not even sure if the project will lift off. I think Libra will do it, but if it was public permissionless at the scale of Facebook, I'm sure the regulator would have shut it down very early because there's a point of failure, which is this big company. And by the time they would try to shut down Bitcoin or Ethereum or ORBS or Cosmos or Tezos, it becomes impossible because it's a decentralized network, it's an open network that creates a much faster network effect. So I think enterprises won't compete with public blockchains, and I think public blockchains, there's not going to be too many because it's a very long-term project. We're running a marathon, you need a lot of funding, and I think there's not going to be many new ones. There's about 10, this is the competition.
So going back to the Voice of IP movie, remember we talked about watching the movie? If you want to know what's going to happen in the future, you have to go watch the movie from 1995. In 1995, IBM and AOL and all the big companies said to all the corporate customers, you can't trust the internet. The internet is a crazy place. It's open, it's public. You want to create a private version. You want to create an intranet. Anyone here old enough to remember the intranet? Right? And 94, 95, 96, all the way to 2000, it looked like the intranet is going to win because all the big companies were building stuff on the intranet. Mm-hmm. But the public network was always bigger, stronger, faster than any intranet, right? And that's what you're seeing today. Today you're seeing the same movie again, right? Libra, Hyperledger, all these things are just intranets. They're all things, private networks that are trying to compete, like I said to you, with the most powerful computer in the world. The Bitcoin network is more powerful than the 500 largest supercomputers. Some of them are here in Seoul, okay? Mm-hmm. It's more powerful than all the Chinese computers and all the Korean computers and all the Japanese supercomputers and all the American supercomputers. So you can't compete with it. I don't care if you're IBM or if you're Facebook or if you're anyone else, okay? You will not be able to compete with that infrastructure. So the horse is out of a barn, like we say in America, right? It's too late. The race already started 10 or 11 years ago, and all the corporate customers that are coming now, if they choose to do private blockchains, they're going to lose. If they choose to do public blockchains, they're going to win. So right now, you don't see a lot of people moving to the public blockchain, what ORBS is building, but we are big believers that the public blockchain is the winning protocol. Who was AWS number one customer? Do you know? Amazon Web Services. Who was their number one customer? Amazon. They built it for themselves. Then they opened it for everybody else. Then they said, here, we built such a great product for ourselves, now you can use it, right? So it's the same thing with ORBS, right? You build it, you test it, you make sure it runs on the ORBS coin, then you can open it up for many, many other customers to use. And again, it's not about store value. What Bitcoin does is not what ORBS does. So you have to think about what are the applications that require public blockchain, require independent governance, require scaling, all these things that we talked about that I showed you in my presentations and Daniel presentations, and really think about that from that perspective. Because when the winning app comes in, the DApp, the distributed application that's going to win, that's going to become the next Facebook, it's not going to come from Facebook. It's going to come from a small company that's sitting, two guys sitting in a coffee shop, right there, across the street. You know? That's where it usually comes from. Just like the winners on the internet, none of the winners on the internet were people that were big guys in 1995. Show me one. One company that was huge in 1995 that is the winner on the internet.